Hello and welcome back to Field Notes Podcast. I'm your host Eden and thank you for joining me in this episode. When is it time to step back, pivot, take a pause, reassess? We're going to dive into it today, but first, a little announcement for you. So first of all, I apologize for the brief lapse in content. Sometimes life just be lifing. On that note, I want to announce that I'm going to be taking a little break from the podcast. TBD how long, hopefully not that long. I really want to get back to it as soon as I can, but life just has some other demands for me at this moment, and unfortunately that means that I gotta take a little pause on the pod. So I'll be missing you. Hopefully you can just keep binging all of the past episodes, just keep downloading all of those, and hopefully we'll be back soon. Sooner rather than later. You know I'll always be back. You can never take me down all the way. I will be back in some form. So just hang in there, stay tuned, and I will be thinking of you. And thank you for being a listener through all the eras, all the chapters. I see you listening. I get your messages. I know you're listening. So thank you. And with that, I kind of wanted to leave you with this episode with a few thoughts on if you're navigating any kind of transition or choice point, not only with like a creative project, but I think this really applies. Everything in our life is creative. Our relationships, what we're choosing to work on, what work we do, how we're choosing to be in our home or in our community or in our life. And so I wanted to leave you with some thoughts on how to know when it's time to make a change or take a step back, or maybe this is like moving home, or maybe it has to do with being invested in a certain relationship or cultivating certain relationships or a work project or whatever it might be. As well things, it is so nuanced, it's so personal, it's so individual, but hopefully in what I'm about to share, it will help give you some thoughts and framing for how you can kind of maybe think about your situation. I think that the first and foremost obvious but implicit thing that you need to take inventory of if you're considering like parting with something or someone, or pivoting something or someone with someone in your life, is you have to know what season you're in. There are so many different seasons of life. I feel like we've been talking about this a lot in the recent episodes, but like there are seasons for hustle and grind. There are seasons for being really disciplined because you're working to develop a particular skill of like communication or editing, or you're at a new job and there's just a time to be really disciplined and consistent with developing a new skill, or you're really just putting in the work into something. Like you're hitting a new level and it's challenging, but it's just time to keep at it. There are other times when it is not the time for that. There's times when it is time to be still, or it's time to slow down, and it's time to take a little bit more space so that you can reflect on what you've been working on and what's working and what's not. And it's time to like get a little bit more perspective. So you have to kind of recognize and get attuned to what is that season for you. There are times when it's time to like really let go and really step into the unknown without really knowing what's on the other side, to really immerse yourself into that void space or that womb-like void, to really have emptiness and let something new take form. So you have to kind of be discerning and attuned to what's happening in your life, in your world, in your psyche, in your outer life, to understand how this particular thing fits into that picture and how this kind of like possible pivot fits into all of those different factors. Okay, the second thing that I have found to be so pivotal in the conversation around, is it time to pivot, or is it time to double down, or is it time to whatever it might be, is you need to be really cognizant. If you have a really strong inner judger or inner critic, you need to be aware of that, because the inner critic will try to, it will get in the way of getting clarity and also having the confidence to follow through on the action of whatever it is that you like are realizing that you might need to adjust in your life. If you have a really strong inner critic, it is going to make that process of discerning so much harder, because the inner critic always has something to say, especially when it comes to, for me in my life at least, whether you are like facing a time when you need to maybe slow down or let something go, or you're considering maybe like committing to something, the inner critic, they're going to try and just sabotage you and be like, oh, you need to slow down. You must be giving up because you're a failure. Or like, oh, you're going to commit to that. Are you sure that's what you need to be doing? Or are you just wasting time, or whatever it might be? If you start trying to make this decision from a place of like arguing or debating your inner critic or your inner judger, you're not going to get to the level of clarity and like inner knowing and conviction that you need to make this decision, because you're going to get caught up in the valid reasons, most likely, why there is value in like maybe whatever the opposite choice is, because these things are not usually black and white. Usually you do have to kind of let go of something, or there's a cost to giving up something or slowing down on something or committing to something new or whatever it might be. And so it is important to weigh the pros and cons and to make a rational decision and to understand both sides. But if you get caught in this space of you're too caught up in this back and forth and you're trying to like almost please the inner critic, you're not going to get to that deeper layer that you need to get to when it comes to just having the clarity to know, okay, deep down, yeah, I know that there could possibly be something on the other side of this that could be valuable to me. And yet deep down, I know that this is not where my heart is right now, or where my energy is flowing right now. You have to kind of let go of any harsh fears or inner judgments around being a failure or not having tried hard enough, or on the flip side, what it's going to mean for you to really be super devoted to this new thing, or to choose this thing instead, or to whatever it might be. You really have to get past all of those more superficial fears that are going to prevent you from being decisive and from moving forwards with that decision. The truth is that there's no perfect way to go about things. There's no way to make it through life perfectly without having to make quote unquote mistakes, or to have moments of imperfection, or to have moments that are really humbling, or to have to change course unexpectedly, or just have things go in a way maybe you didn't foresee. There's no way to make it through life without going through those moments. So those moments do not make you a failure. They do not mean you haven't tried hard enough. They do not mean you're not doing enough in the future. It just means that that is normal. That's actually a normal part of living. And the best you can do is try to like navigate that based on the information that you have and your inner compass in this moment. Okay, next, something to think about is the difference between stopping something or ending something, or, I'm thinking like it's time to move, or it's time to break up with the person. The difference between that and slowing things down, because sometimes the urge can feel similar. Like when you start getting the feeling that you need to pivot something or change something, sometimes we forget to discern, like sometimes that's not an indication you need to throw the whole thing out. It's just a sign you need to reassess something, or refine something, or pivot. Like you've come to a point of reflection. So letting it be a point of reflection and taking a moment to reflect instead of immediately feeling like you have to make a decision one way or another. Because this happens a lot. This happens a lot when we have achieved something we wanted to achieve, or when we we kind of like developed the skill we were hoping to develop in doing something, or maybe we got something from the relationship that we were really wanting and we got it in this relationship, but maybe there's something else missing. Or the same with a creative endeavor, it's really giving you something you were hoping to get, but like maybe now you're noticing there's something else. And so maybe the same with work. You initially pursued this type of project because X, but now you're finding maybe it's time for more of Y. And it just takes slowing down to reflect on what that slowdown is. I feel like when we're going through this type of pivot, your body, your intuition really gives you that information by there's a slowing down. There's like a slowing down of energy. So taking a moment to pause rather than stop and assess, it takes space to assess. So we need that slow down. We need that zoom out. We need that moment of taking pressure off from making a decision or from having clarity to have the space to even reflect. So giving yourself that. Thinking about some of the signs that you were kind of in this terrain, there's this feeling of when maybe you're approaching like a pivot point or a point for refinement or a point for assessment or a point to just tweak something maybe or make a big change or let something go. There can be this slowing down. Something that felt lighter, it starts feeling heavier. It starts feeling like a heavier lift. It starts feeling less organically energizing. You don't feel as lit up by it. And even when you push through the initial resistance of doing the hard thing about this thing, so maybe that's like communicating with your partner about some of the challenges or ways that you're feeling, or you're pushing through the creative resistance to really still like devote yourself to the endeavor, or at work, yeah, same thing. Even when you're pushing through the initial resistance to that's always there when we're doing something hard, you're still not feeling energized on the other side of that. I think that those can all be signs that the energy is sort of like shifting around this endeavor or relationship or whatever it might be. Something also might just have become logistically unfeasible. Sometimes it's not necessarily that there's like an issue with that thing. It just has more to do with the timing of your life, or it has to do with other commitments, or it has to do with something coming up with your kids that takes precedence, or something coming up with your family, or whatever it might be. And you're kind of left without a choice in that aspect because you just simply don't have the bandwidth to devote yourself to everything that you're trying to devote yourself to. It could also be that something that you have been devoted to is now competing with something else that you've also been devoted to. So like I was talking earlier about, like maybe you were in a chapter where it was really about planting a lot of seeds and nurturing a lot of different seeds and throwing stuff at the wall, or maybe it's dating a lot of people and you've dated 2 people and you're hitting a point where you can't go any further dating these 2 different people and investing your time and energy equally into both. Like there's going to be a time limit on something like that, where in order to get to the next phase of what you're wanting, you have to kind of make a decision and go deeper into one thing rather than trying to do a bunch of different things. So that can also be a time when you have to reassess and pivot or let something go. Finally, you may have just outgrown that thing. Like you may have genuinely outgrown this thing and there's nothing else. Like it's not like you can kind of pivot what projects you're working on. There's nothing you can tweak. You've been working on the relationship so much and you just have this sense that you have to let this thing go. And you have to step into that full void space and that full surrender space, and you're not going to know what's coming next, but you just know that you have exhausted, you have given everything you can give to it, you have gained everything you can gain from it, and it's just like the contract is complete. There's going to be a time where something else is ready to be birthed, but you can't get there unless you create space for it to come through. And sometimes that can be psychic space, like it's more withdrawing your your energy from something. And sometimes it is true physical space. And sometimes it's a combination of both, where you have to part with that thing in order to make space to be in that unknown for the next thing to take root. Okay, I hope that something that I shared today resonated and helped you to maybe just locate yourself a little bit more in whatever it is that you're going through and find a little bit more clarity. Like I said, I will be taking a pause from the podcast for a little while. Stay tuned. Make sure you're following my podcast Instagram. That's where if I ever have like a quick message to share, I'll put it up there. Keep an eye on the YouTube and the podcast. Subscribe to the podcast on wherever you listen, and I'll be back when I'm back. Thank you so much for listening. It really means so much. And I will talk to you in the next one.